Part 112. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1112. Chapter 1112. Why is it just a fake spiritual root? Chenbin shook his head helplessly, exhaled, and said to everyone in order, I will touch your bones to test your qualifications. Those who pass will become my Vajra sect disciples. Everyone agreed in a loud voice, and there was no one making noises. What a joke! Looking at the two people from the Vajra sect, there are faint signs of spiritual energy leaking out of their bodies. They are clearly masters who have reached the Suanwi realm, but they are not the ones who dare to mess with those who are at the 3rd or 4th level of Kaiwu. Suchen followed the crowd, slowly and quietly, observing the two people from the Vajra sect secretly, trying to figure out some information about the Vajra sect. Unfortunately, a loud shout interrupted Suchen's thinking. Well, that boy is you, stop looking around, come over here and do the bone test. Unexpectedly, the Vajra sect member named Jingshen was the first one to call Suchen over. It seems that the little fight he had just had was ignored by these two people. Suchen came to the two of them. Jingshen looked the young man up and down with curiosity in his eyes. By the way, their Vajra sect has not seen such a magical young man for many years. With only the strength of the 2nd level Chi Wu, he actually defeated 3 3rd level Chi Wu warriors. Pressing and beating, interesting, so interesting. Chenbin was much more stable than his junior brother Jingshen. He kept silent, attached one hand to Suchen's back, and kneaded it up and down. His originally serious face suddenly became filled with surprise. Pseudo-spiritual roots. Chenbin exclaimed. Pseudo-spiritual roots, Jingshen stared at Suchen in shock. Pseudo-spiritual roots, everyone around them was shocked at first, and then they all had different expressions. Some were gloating about the misfortune, while others were secretly regretful. Ha ha ha. It's actually a pseudo-spiritual root, Gao Shizhen laughed 3 times when he heard the news. He rubbed the injured area and stared at Suchen in front of him with a cruel smile. Now let you be arrogant for a while. After a year or 2, I will punish you in an upright manner. This kid is crushed to death. Although the 3 brothers of the Gao family are inferior in strength, they are still real spiritual roots. Although they are the worst among low-grade spiritual roots, they are much better than fake spiritual roots. Ha 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 ha. Brother, this revenge will be avenged soon. The 3 brothers of the Gao family laughed so happily that their wounds seemed to no longer hurt. Bang bang bang. I'll retaliate for your paralysis, I don't know when. Suchen suddenly appeared in front of the 3 people again, and punched them randomly, making the 3 people howl like ghosts. Everyone looked at him. This young man named Suchen was so arrogant. 2 disciples of the Vajra sect were here. He actually dared to act so wantonly. Jingshen watched with gusto and couldn't help but mutter, what a pity, to treat me so badly. But as the chief official of this recruitment, Chenbin, we cannot allow anyone to dare to act recklessly in front of the Vajra sect members, so he immediately shouted stop it. At the same time, he pushed with a single palm, and a strong palm wind pushed away everyone, pushing Suchen and Gao Shii away from each other more than 10 meters away. Chenbin, who possesses the 6th level of Suanwi realm, has many peers in the Vajra section among people. He is also a top-ranking being. Although this palm is extremely casual, it is not something that these people with only the 2nd and 3rd levels of Kaiwa can resist. Suddenly, everyone fell on their backs, and all the people who had just been beaten by Suchen were crawling all over the ground. The 3 brothers, Gao Shii, were pushed over several times by the wind of the palm before they stopped. Although Suchen was also affected by this huge force, he quickly retreated while releasing the force. After more than 10 steps, unexpectedly neutralized this palm wind, and stood firmly in the middle of the crowd. You can actually take this palm from me. Chenbin was a little surprised, but the more amazing this young man's skills are, the more regrettable he is. There is no other reason, fake Ling Jenner. Why is it just a fake spiritual root? Jing Sheng on the side said something. This young man's behavior is quite to his liking. However, no matter how good Su Chen's fighting skills are now, they can't make up for his extremely poor qualifications. A monk is not only good at martial arts. Yes. No matter how good the martial arts and the exquisite footwork of a monk at the third level of Kaiwu are, he can only end up being crushed when he encounters a monk in the Suanhui realm. Just like a mortal who can reduce his power by 10, no matter how strong his skills are, he will be crushed. He couldn't bear a blow from a powerful person. However, Su Chen had mixed feelings in his heart. He once had the peak strength of the 9th level of the Suanhui realm, but a person like Chen Bin, who was at the 6th level of the Suanhui realm, would never be able to pass 3 moves in his hands. But now, I have to try my best to receive his random blow. It's a pity that even if he is allowed to enter my Vajra sect, his achievements will be extremely limited. It would be great luck to reach the 7th or 8th level of Qi martial arts in this life, Chen Bin said softly. Jing Shen nodded. However, he can still be recruited as an outer disciple and practice hard for 3 to 5 years. Although his cultivation level will not increase much, with this kid's martial arts skills, he can still tangle with people at the 6th level of Qi martial arts. Chen Bin looked at Jing Shen with amusement, a little surprised that he would say these words. Aren't you quite interested in this boy? Why, are you willing to let him die on the battlefield? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1113. Chapter 1113 Entering the King Kong Gate. Registered Disciple. Jing Sheng suddenly changed his cynical attitude and said with a serious expression, it would be a pity for such a strong general to be left in the mortal world. If he can help our Vajra sect expand our territory, it will be a waste for him to come to this world. Take a walk. Ah! Chen Bin couldn't help but laugh. This was not what his junior brother said. He stared at the cuffs of his crooked junior brother and sighed. The spirit stones haven't been hidden yet, they're all exposed. Jing Sheng let out a soft cry of ah and quickly tucked the spirit stone in his sleeve into his sleeve. He laughed and said, "Oh, why did my spirit stone come here?" Chen Bin shook his head. He didn't know when the boy bribed Jing Sheng. However, since his junior brother has spoken for him, he couldn't help his junior brother's face. Furthermore, as his junior brother Jing Sheng said, after practicing for 3 to 5 years, that kid should be a little better than a 6th level Kaiwu monk, and he may still be of some use to the sect. Thinking of this, Chen Bin wrote a big stroke on the book and said loudly, "Su Chen, you passed the test and are allowed to enter our Vajra section. Your status is that of a registered disciple of the Vajra sect." Hearing these words, Su Chen smiled slightly, looked at Jing Sheng in front of him, and nodded in greeting. Jing Sheng glanced at the senior brother beside him, looked at Su Chen, and nodded slightly awkwardly, for the first time in his life. I was caught on the spot after accepting bribes. I really lost my reputation as a Jingdogwan. When people around me saw that a person with fake spiritual qualifications could enter the Vajra sect, they were all very happy, thinking that this time the Vajra sect was successful. When choosing a disciple, he was bound to be chosen. However, after several people with insufficient qualifications were declared unqualified, those people immediately started shouting, pointing at Su Chen, who was meditating beside the old god, and said he passed the pseudo-spiritual root test. No matter how bad we are still much better than him. Why was he chosen but we couldn't? Right? This is unfair. Right? We want an explanation. Otherwise. Chen Bin narrowed his eyes slightly, stared at the troublemakers and said, "What else?" Well, a few people didn't dare to say anything. It was a joke. They were just excited and spoke indiscriminately. If they dared to offend the 2 Vajra sect members, they would probably die without knowing how. Chen Bin snorted coldly and said, "It's not your turn to say who our King Kong sect wants to choose and who we don't want to choose. As for whether it's fair or unfair, if you can defeat that little guy, then I can announce it, and so can you. Enter my Vajra gate." After hearing these words, everyone glanced at the young man who was meditating alone, and then looked at the injured Gao 11 and others who were huddled in a corner, and couldn't help but shudder. Just accept the reality honestly. These days, whoever has the biggest fist speaks the loudest. The farce immediately subsided. An hour later, the disciple selection of the Vajra sect was successfully completed. A total of 81 disciples were selected, which could be regarded as making up for the loss of more than 100 people in the last battle with the Jianhe sect. After explaining some rules to the 81 newcomers, Chen Bin and Jing Sheng took these people directly to the Vajra sect headquarters. Along the way, Su Chen roughly understood some of the rules of the Vajra section. For example, the 81 of them entered the Vajra sect as registered disciples. They were not considered real Vajra sect disciples. If they failed to pass the quarterly examination after 3 months, they would still be dismissed. Those who were deprived of their status as registered disciples by the Vajra sect. Even if you pass the quarterly exam, you may not be able to stay in peace and practice at the Vajra gate. If you don't get into the top 50% in the annual exam 1 year later, you will be kicked off the list and change from an ordinary disciple to an outer disciple. The outer disciples of the Vajra sect are different from the outer disciples of the Kingxia sect. The outer disciples of the Vajra sect are disciples who specialize in external affairs, such as taking care of the secular industry of the Vajra sect or fighting with surrounding sections. They are the first-line personnel to bear the brunt and do not have much time to practice. If they are unlucky enough to go to the battlefield, the probability of death is extremely high. This conflicted with Su Chen's plan to practice with peace of mind. Therefore, in order to improve his cultivation level as soon as possible, he must obtain a good ranking in the next quarterly examination and even the annual examination. Moreover, I heard that in every exam, there are good rewards for the top 10, such as elixirs, spiritual stones, magic weapons, and spiritual talismans. These things are not something ordinary disciples can have. For Su Chen, it would be great if he could get some pills that could increase his cultivation level or speed up his cultivation. Even though Su Chen's strength can steadily surpass the other 80 people now, after 3 months or 1 year, if Su Chen doesn't get any pills to increase his cultivation, the strength of most of the people here will be far higher than that of the other 80 people. If he surpasses him, it will be very difficult for him to defeat these people with martial arts. The quarterly exam and the annual exam are related to the fate of each of the 81 people here. Along the way, some sweet-tongued people couldn't help asking for information from Jing Sheng, the best-tempered of the two. "Uncle Jing, can you tell us, our nephews, what are the criteria for passing the quarterly examination?" a middle-aged man over 40 asked, nodding and bending as he followed Jing Sheng, who looked to be in his early 20s. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1114. Chapter 1114 Guying Jr.'s sister. The most adorable creature, hugeable rabbit. Jing Sheng liked the feeling of being surrounded and looked up to by everyone very much, and said with a smile. Standards, there are no standards. The sect is in a period of expansion and there are many places that need disciples. I think many of you have very good qualifications and have a high chance of passing the quarterly examination. You don't have to worry too much, haha. After all this nonsense, the middle-aged man still didn't get any answers, but he didn't give up and followed Jing Sheng. I want to build a good relationship with my uncle, so that I can establish myself well in the Vajra gate in the future. There are many people who think the same as this person, so along the way, Jing Sheng was surrounded by a large group of people, which made Chen Bin seem a bit out of the ordinary. However, when a sect recruits disciples, one always wants to be a good person and the other is a bad person. This way, a sufficient number of disciples can be recruited, and these newcomers will not be too presumptuous and know how to abide by the rules. Fuhiling is far away from King Kong. The mountain gate is not far away, and everyone is a monk who practices spiritual energy. In less than half a day, they arrived at the mountain gate of the Vajra Gate. Unlike the Kingxia sect, which is hidden in the mountains, although the Vajra Gate is also built in the mountains, in the middle. However, the gate did not have any formations to block people's hearing. Instead, it was built in the open. Even for fear that others would not see it, the gate was majestic, tall and majestic, with a width of 50 meters and 10 meters high. Standing on the mountainside, it is like the Nantian gate of the heavenly palace in myths and legends, which is really eye-catching. However, when everyone was staring up at this huge gate with their mouths open, a pretty and cute girl in a goose yellow dress, a human girl, standing under the huge gate, glaring at this side with an angry look on her face. Jing Sheng was the first to see her, exclaimed, and hurriedly dodged into the crowd. But he heard a voice as sweet as an oriole. The sound of drinking. "Mr. Jing, please return my magic weapon and pills." Jing Sheng wanted to shamelessly step back, but Chen Bin stopped him and forcibly pulled him in front of the girl. He also loved this lovely girl named Gu Ying. Facing the pitiful look in the girl's eyes, he could only think of this as unreliable. "My junior brother betrayed me." "Ah. Junior sister Gu, it turns out you are here. Senior brother has only been away from the sect for a long time, but to have junior sister care about him so much, he is really lucky." Jing Sheng forced himself to stand in front of the girl, but he started talking nonsense again. Seeing Jing Sheng like this, the girl immediately stretched out her little foot and kicked him, put her hands on her hips, and said cutely and savagely, "If you do this again, I will tell my grandpa." Upon hearing this, Jing Sheng immediately begged for mercy. A pair of eyes rolled around, then glanced sideways at Su Chen in the crowd. His eyes immediately lit up, and he smiled flatteringly at the girl. "Junior sister, senior brother sincerely wants to give you some compensation this time. Have you ever heard of a cute creature in this world called Hug Rabbit?" The girl's heart was moved when she heard this, but she was obviously scared of being tricked by this weird senior brother. She stared into his eyes defensively and asked, "Of course I've heard of, Mr. Jing, what tricks do you want to play? I'm telling you, if you lie to me again, I will tell my grandpa." Jing Sheng waved his hands repeatedly and said he didn't dare, then pointed at Su Chen in the crowd with a smile and said, "Have you seen that naughty boy? It was him. Although I was on a sect mission when I came down the mountain this time, I still didn't dare to forget my little junior sister, so I brought this boy with me specially. With him, you can definitely get that adorable creature, the hugeable rabbit." "Is that silly boy really as powerful as you say?" Gu Ying looked at the young man who was looking around in the distance with suspicion. She looked around and found that apart from being a little pleasing to the eye, she didn't think there was anything strange about this young man. In order to enhance the junior sister's confidence, Jing Sheng shouted, "Don't look at that kid, it's no problem to fight 10 by 1 person." He immediately grabbed another person and asked him fiercely, "This nephew, am I right?" That person happened to be the middle-aged new disciple who had been fawning over him all the way. Hearing this, he immediately nodded like a chicken pecking at rice and said, "Yes. What my uncle said is absolutely true. My nephew and I saw it with my own eyes. That boy named Su Chen beat away a group of people. He was extremely powerful." Jing Sheng glanced at this enlightened nephew with satisfaction, and then said to his junior sister, "Look, I didn't lie to you. Oh. Since he is so powerful, I just want to test his strength myself." Gu Ying is not stupid, she is gearing up and seems to really want to step forward. Jing Sheng's forehead is covered with sweat and he quickly blocks this difficult to dismiss junior sister. A person who is at the first level of the Suanwi realm is going to try a person who is at the second level of the Kaiwa realm? Such an inhumane thing, can he watch it happen? Although even if the kid was beaten away, it had little to do with his Jingsheng, but his perfunctory words were seen through. So he could only swear that within a month, he would kill that kid, hug the rabbit, presented it to the little junior sister, and then coaxed her. Seeing Guying go away, Jingsheng wiped his sweat, patted Suchen's shoulder a little apologetically, and said, "Ah, this time Uncle Master is in a hurry to obey the authority, and there is nothing he can do about it. This time, Uncle Master, I owe you a favor, how about it? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion." Author, 7 years. Chapter 1115. Chapter 1115. Strength is respected. Hug the rabbit cub in exchange for chi gathering powder. Suchen expressionlessly pushed away his hand on his shoulder without saying a word. He just walked into the Vajra gate under the leadership of Chen Bin. Jingsheng raised his eyebrows. This guy has character. It seems like he won't help fulfill this lie if he doesn't give me any benefits. Along the way, Suchen felt that the Vajra gate was a little less fairy-like than the Kingxia gate, but had a little more human fireworks. Except for the main peak where the master is hidden in the clouds and mist, the rest of the mountains are small peaks hundreds of meters high. Although they are not majestic, the buildings everywhere are well proportioned, the streams are meandering, and the singing of birds is crisp and charming. There is also a unique scenery. But along the way, what I saw the most in the Vajra sect were huge martial arts arenas, in which many disciples were either diligently practicing martial arts or competing with each other, making it very lively. From another perspective, the competition in this Vajra sect is indeed fierce. Otherwise, if you were just cultivating immortals, why would you need such strenuous martial arts? This Vajra sect seems to be a sect that values martial arts prowess. Suchen felt awe-inspiring in his heart. After arranging the residence of these new disciples and explaining some things, Chen Bin and Jingsheng left immediately. However, after a while, Jingsheng turned back and called Suchen out alone. Under the flowing water of the small bridge, Jingsheng sat on the grass with his feet spread out, squinting his eyes to enjoy the evening time, and suddenly said, "Tell me, what do you want before you are willing to help me get rid of that little trouble?" Suchen, looking up at the sunset with his arms on his pillow, he thought about it. After observing this day, Jingsheng should not be a sinister person. Judging from his behavior, although he is a little frivolous, overall he can try to make this friend. Little trouble? Suchen snorted coldly. Since it's a small trouble, then I won't make a fool of myself. Brother Jing is so powerful, such a small trouble can naturally be easily solved. Jingsheng heard that Suchen only called him brother, rather than uncle and nephew, who was forcibly divided by cultivation level, and he felt that he was interested in me. But when he heard Suchen say this, he felt helpless. It seems that this boy is, if you don't see the rabbit, you won't let go of the hawk? Tell me, what benefits do you want? I will try to, reluctantly, almost satisfy you." Jingsheng said hesitantly, and his sincerity was obviously doubtful. Suchen shook his head and said leisurely, "Oh, I have a way to catch that hugging rabbit, but some people are too stingy and don't give any benefits. To let others risk their lives is really, tisk tisk." Jingsheng stood up, stared at Suchen and said, "Can you really catch hug rabbit?" It's not that he is suspicious, but that even with his cultivation level of Jingsheng Suanwi realm second level, it would be difficult to catch a 2-star low-level monster hugging a rabbit. This Suchen only has a level 2 Kaiwa realm cultivation level. How dare you say that you can catch hug rabbit? However, Jingsheng still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. If Suchen could really catch hug rabbit as he said, then Guying's big trouble would be completely solved. I no longer have to hide from that little ant. Suchen bit a piece of dogtail grass and said calmly, "Of course it's not an adult hug rabbit, I can still catch the baby hug rabbit." of hug the bunny cub. Jing Shen believed the words even more and said happily, the cub is good, the cub is even cuter, Su-chen, if I can really catch him, I will definitely not miss out on the benefits that should be given to you. But Su-chen shook his head and said, Brother Jing, do you think I am that little girl? No matter how good the pie painting is, why not give me a deposit first? After saying that, he stretched out his hand. Jing Shen laughed dryly, knowing that this kid was cunning, so he could only return the 6 spiritual stones he got from Su-chen in the morning. But Su-chen took the spiritual stones again. She handed it back to him and said, I don't want the spirit stone won't do much for me now. Jing Shen looked at the spirit stone in his hand and said in astonishment, then what do you want? Gather energy and disperse. Su-chen stared closely into his eyes. Cut. What did I think it was? It turns out that you need chi gathering powder, which is correct. With your cultivation level and such spiritual roots, there is indeed no chi gathering powder that is more suitable for you. Jing Shen touched his chin and said, no problem, I'll get it for you tomorrow, but the quantity won't be large. Su Chen was overjoyed when he heard this. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, the amount of chi gathering powder is related to the length of time it takes to capture the hugging rabbit. I know Brother Jing is impatient, but I can't suffer too much. How about a deposit of 10 packets of Juki powder? Too many, 5 packs, Jing Sheng said without hesitation. 5 packs is too few, 9 packs, no more. Maximum 6 packs, otherwise. Oh. What else? Su-chen said with a smile. He caught Jing Sheng's sore leg. He also hoped to comfort the aunt as soon as possible, so as not to make people think that he had bullied her. If her grandfather found out, he would be really miserable. Got it? 7 packs. No more fighting, Jing Sheng looked at Su-chen and said. Su-chen smiled and nodded. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1116. Chapter 1116, The Mountain Man has a clever plan. The two discussed and agreed, and Jing Sheng asked curiously, how are you going to capture the hug rabbit? Even if it is a cub, you have to go deep into the hug rabbit territory, and the danger is not just because of your second level Kaiwa strength. Resistance. Su-chen smiled mysteriously. The mountain man has his own clever plan. Jing Sheng left with curiosity and questions. Su-chen breathed a long sigh of relief, looked at the setting sun on the horizon, and said secretly, this is the first step. I finally walked out. With these chi gathering powders, I can be somewhat confident about the quarterly exam in 3 months. Su-chen looked in the direction of Qingxia sect and clenched his fists. Destroy my spiritual roots and destroy my cultivation. Whether it's the mysterious mastermind or Yang Su, wait for me. One day, I, Su-chen, will go to the Qingxia sect again and avenge this deep hatred with my own hands. As one of the persons in charge of the selection of new disciples, Jing Sheng wanted to assign Su-chen to do something, but almost no one would ask. When other new disciples began their first day of teaching exercises at the Vajra Gate, Jing Sheng took Su-chen to the mountains 150 miles away from the Vajra Gate. I don't know what method you will use to catch the cuttle rabbits, but this place is a gathering place for these monster beasts. Their territory covers a 10-mile radius, and the number is estimated to be no less than 100. The two of them stood on a cliff. Jing Sheng pointed to the valley below and said to Su-chen. I think, Jing Sheng stared at Su-chen, you wouldn't do something stupid just for a few packets of chi gathering powder, right? Su-chen smiled and looked at Jing Sheng. You think I'm risking my life just to catch a pet? People. That's true. Jing Sheng felt relieved, crossed his arms and pointed at the mountains behind him, saying, I'm on the mountain behind. If anything happens, just give me a loud roar. Jing Sheng threw the bamboo flute in his hand into the air. The bamboo flute swelled in the wind, like a small boat. Jing Sheng jumped lightly, stepped on the bamboo flute flying magic weapon, and turned around and shouted, "You kid has a good temper with me. Don't die casually." After saying that, he moved his two fingers together and walked towards the sky. This bamboo flute-shaped flying instrument actually made a pleasant music in the air. As the music faded away, Suchen withdrew his gaze and looked at the dense forest under his feet. Showing a thoughtful look. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. On the handsome mountain peak, a small cave was artificially carved out of the stone wall. The morning glow reflected in the sky, and the rolling red sun revealed half of its face, illuminating the sea of clouds brightly. Suchen walked out of the cave, faced the rising sun, sat cross-legged on the top of the mountain, and began to learn about the old, absorb the new, and practice spiritual energy. He has been like this every day for the past half-month. He has already taken 6 of the 7 packets of qi gathering powder given by Jing Sheng. Now, he wants to use this last pack. After taking qi gathering powder non-stop for half a month, his cultivation has now broken through the 2nd level of Kaiwu and reached the late stage of the 3rd level of Kaiwu. If he hadn't practiced the residual scroll technique, which is famous for its large amount of spiritual energy, and had taken so many qi gathering powders, he would have reached the 4th or 5th level of qi martial arts if he had used ordinary techniques. Suchen also didn't expect that the amount of spiritual energy required to break through the 1st level of this residual scroll technique would be so large. Today's last pack of qi gathering powder, after taking it, I don't know if I can break through the 3rd level of Kaiwu and reach the 4th level of Kaiwu. Suchen adjusted his condition to the best, and practiced for a while relying on his pseudo-spiritual talent. He felt that his body was full of spiritual energy, and at this time, the morning sun had completely risen, and the rays of light penetrated the sea of clouds and shone on Suchen's body. At this moment when Yang Qi and spiritual energy were at their strongest, Suchen raised his head and took the last packet of qi gathering powder. Suddenly, the gathered energy dispersed in Suchen's body and turned into a pure warm current, flowing throughout his body along his meridians. The heat stimulated by the rising sun outside the body promoted the spiritual energy in the body to flow faster. After a while, Suchen could clearly hear the sound of billowing spiritual energy flowing in the meridians in the body. The spiritual energy of qi martial realm monks is stored in their meridians. Therefore, the number and thickness of the meridians developed directly determine the strength of the monk. The advantage of the residual scroll technique is that once the meridians are developed, after continuous spiritual energy nourishment, the meridians will gradually become thicker, thus increasing the amount of spiritual energy in the body. However, the thickening of the meridians is not conducive to the breakthrough of realm. The same amount of spiritual energy will cause greater pressure in smaller meridians, making it easier to open the next meridians. Therefore, practicing the residual scroll technique also means a breakthrough in realm, which is more difficult than for monks who practice other techniques. But Suchen still chose this path resolutely, because the brocade book he found from the man in black said 1 or 3 build the foundation, 4 or 6 are reborn, 7 or 9 reshape the bones, and 10 levels of enlightenment. He now only has a false spiritual root. If he cannot be reborn, change his muscles, cut his marrow, and change his qualifications in this life, how can he avenge the mysterious man and Yang Su? Abandoning distracting thoughts, Suchen concentrated on controlling the spiritual energy in his body. The spiritual energy is in the meridians. The flow went round and round, and as Suchen deliberately moved it, its speed became faster and faster, and gradually he could feel a faint bulging sensation in his meridians. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1117. Chapter 1117, the 4th level of Kaiwu. Get drunk and hug the bunny. Suchen did not pause, but speeded up the flow of spiritual energy again. It wasn't until his meridians ached and cold sweat broke out on his forehead that he finally gathered his strength, directed the flowing spiritual energy to an undeveloped meridian, and slammed into it. Boom, with a sound, the meridians were opened by 1/3, but the momentum of the spiritual energy was also exhausted. Suchen took up the spiritual energy again, and accelerated its movement in the body. When the meridians again felt a dull pain, he faced the meridians that were not fully developed. Suddenly hit me again. Boom. Suchen's face was pale and cold sweat was pouring down. Fortunately, he was pushed away by 1/3 this time. Suchen gritted his teeth and used his spiritual power again. Success or failure depends on this. Suchen ignored the pain in his meridians and forcibly accelerated the flow of spiritual energy by 1 point. The meridians were overwhelmed and showed signs of disorder. "Open it for me!" Suchen roared angrily, and his whole body's spiritual energy hit the meridians that were 2/3 developed with an irresistible force. With a click, the meridians were finally completely connected and became a new member of the many meridians around the body, guiding spiritual power to travel throughout the body. Suchen stood up and exhaled, with a faint look of joy on his face, looking at the sea of clouds. The bright sun above said softly, "The 4th level of Qi martial arts is accomplished." The cultivation level of the 4th level of Kaiwu is roughly equivalent to the skill of a mortal who has cultivated inner strength for 70 or 80 years. This is already comparable to some old monsters among mortals, so skills such as rock climbing and jumping are naturally out of the question. What's more, Suchen stayed in the Qingxia sect for 7 years. He practiced a wide variety of martial arts, and his body movements were strong and agile. He jumped off this steep cliff in a few clicks. The mountain was high and cold, but the foot of the mountain was covered with pine forests and green grass. Suchen was lying on a stretched out on the rock, looking down at a 1-meter diameter grass nest more than 50 meters below. 3 rooster-sized cuddling rabbits are huddled together, sleeping in the grass nest in a daze, fluffy. The appearance is really endearing. In the past half-month, Suchen often observed the living habits of the cuddle rabbits on the rock below. He knew that this was the time when the adult cuddle rabbits went out to look for food. In about 1 month, when they are young, the parents of these 3 cute cuddle rabbits will bring them fresh lingding grass. Lingding grass is the staple food of cuddle rabbits and will only grow in the habitat of cuddle rabbits, often growing in some places around a deep pool. Suchen knew that he didn't have much time, so he took out a large handful of picked lingding grass from his back. This lingding grass was different from ordinary lingding grass. They had been soaked by Suchen in fruit wine for 1 night, so they had a strong grassy fragrance. With the fragrance of fruit wine, even Suchen couldn't help but take a deep breath. Suchen quietly climbed down the rock and performed the dragon walk. His body was light and his feet were almost silent. But the hug rabbit is a 2-star low-level monster with a naturally sharp spiritual sense. Even the weak hug bunnies could detect a trace of Suchen's movement in their sleep. These 3 hug bunnies wrinkled their cute little noses, licked their mouths, and chirped softly. Feeling that there was no movement from before, he fell asleep again. Suchen breathed a sigh of relief quietly, took out 3 strawberries soaked in fruit wine from his arms, placed them at his feet, and then retreated quietly. The 3 little guys. The sense of smell is very sensitive, and for cubs, eating is obviously more attractive than sleeping. He immediately stood up unsteadily, his nose twitched, and chirped softly a few times towards the location of the lingding grass, and immediately stumbled towards Suchen. Jumping over. Suchen was delighted when he saw this. This method really worked, so he put one in after a few steps, and gradually led the 3 confused little guys to a hidden place 100 meters away. The reason for this: he was cautious because he was afraid that these 3 little guys would suddenly chirp loudly. If the guarded adult cuddle rabbits were called, Suchen's life would be in danger. They were monsters that even Jing Sheng in the Suanhui realm was afraid of. Suchen was only a little angry. The 4th level of Wu did not dare to take risks. He put down all the remaining Linko in one go, and then Suchen hid himself tens of meters away and observed quietly. The three greedy little guys soon put down the pile of Linko. After eating all the grass, the three little guys were a little drunk because it was soaked in rich fruit wine. They stumbled and fell to the ground drunk, and kept smashing the grass with their little mouths, as if they hadn't eaten enough. Done. Suchen secretly screamed and walked softly to the three little guys. Monsters are monsters after all. Even in this situation, the three drunken hugging rabbits smelled the smell of strangers. They reluctantly opened their big watery eyes and saw Suchen, a large creature. Alertness flashed in their eyes, and then their bodies moved. A layer of ice crystals wrapped around their bodies at an extremely fast speed. But that was all they could do. How could his young body bear the drunkenness of the fruit wine? He reluctantly and instinctively put up a layer of protection before falling drunk again. Fortunately, Suchen had already raised his strength to the 4th level of Kaiwu. Through a thick layer of cotton, only then did he dare to pack up the three cuddly bunnies. But even so, bursts of cold air still came from the cotton cloth, eroding the spiritual power in Suchen's body through his hands. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1118. Chapter 1118. Am I the shameless person? You have to go up the mountain and leave this place as soon as possible, otherwise, if you are discovered by those adult cuddle rabbits, it will not just be as simple as being furious. Suchen jumped on the rocks and was about to leave. But a moment's hesitation in his mind made him turn back down, leaving only one baby rabbit in his arms, and then he quickly climbed up with the remaining two. Cliff, came to the top of the mountain. God would still leave a glimmer of hope for all things, but Suchen didn't want to find any of his children after the pair of hugging rabbits came back. Putting down the cotton package, Suchen stood on the mountains, facing the opposite side. The mountains roared loudly. You really caught it? And there are two. Jingsheng held two sleeping cuddly bunnies in one hand, not caring about the cold air emanating from them, and the surprise on his face was not concealed at all. Suchen smiled faintly and stretched out his hand. The rest. What about Juki-san? Jing. Sheng stuffed the two cuddly bunnies back into the bag and said with some annoyance, can you stop looking so indifferent all the time? Also, don't talk to me about chi gathering powder, hurt feelings. Oh? Are you going to default? Suchen stared at him. Jingsheng coughed twice, puffed out his chest and said, am I the kind of shameless person? Don't look at me like that. Snort. The rest of the gathering energy was scattered with that little girl Guying. You actually caught two huggable bunnies. I guess that little girl won't be stingy. His grandfather is the elder of our sect's medicine garden, and most of the pills in the sect are the medicines are all provided by the medicine garden, and a few packs of low-level elixirs are nothing to her. Reluctantly accepting Jingsheng's conditions, the two took the flying magic weapon and whizzed past a distance of 150 miles. Suchen had also used this kind of magic weapon before, but later because his spiritual roots were destroyed, he was in a state of confusion. It was destroyed, so standing on Jingsheng's bamboo flute, he felt indifferent, not as novel and excited as those new disciples. And this scene was seen by Jingsheng, and he felt that this guy just liked to pretend, and maybe he was not sure what he was thinking. What a success! I thought back to the first time he used his master's flying sword to control the sky, but he was so excited that he couldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. An hour later, the two came to the entrance of the Vajragate medicine garden, and Jingsheng he changed his cynical attitude and bowed respectfully to the doorman. Please also inform junior sister Guying that Jingsheng is visiting. The doorman curled his lips, obviously knowing who Jingsheng was, and said, wait, I went to report it. After a while, a cute girl with 2 black braids came over, still 100 meters away. When she saw the bag in Jingsheng's hand from a distance, her big eyes immediately lit up. I couldn't help but trotted over, and when I came to the two of them, I remembered something again, my pretty face tensed up, and I asked coldly, "What do you want from me?" It's just that those wonderful eyes couldn't help but look into the bag. Suchen looked funny, and this girl was also interesting. Jingsheng pretended to cough, and then opened the corner of the bag, revealing a fur wrapped in ice crystals. Fluffy little head, and then immediately tied the bag tightly. Ah, when the girl saw the little head, she couldn't take her eyes away immediately. She grabbed Jingsheng's hand and shook it hard. "Brother, show me." Jingsheng raised his head and said, Want to see it? Don't beg me." Suchen caught it all. "What I said at the beginning was that this kid has miraculous skills, but you just didn't believe it." When Guying heard this, she immediately turned to Suchen, grabbed Suchen's arm and shook it hard. "Junior brother, please let me take a look." On the way here, the two of them had already discussed how to sell her at a good price and blackmail this little girl, so Suchen turned his head away and pretended to admire the scenery. Snort. "I'm your senior sister." "No, it's your uncle. If you dare not promise me, I will beat you." Guying raised her delicate little pink fist and glared at Suchen fiercely. Suchen looked at her, who was about 15 years old, and it was impossible for him to admit that she was his uncle. Jingsheng was in his 20s. Years old. Suchen has never called him uncle once. Ahem. Suchen and Jingsheng exchanged glances and said slowly, "It's not impossible to see if you want. These two cuddly bunnies were originally given to you." 2. Still a baby, Guying was so surprised that she wanted to snatch the bag, but Jingsheng dodged it. She was so anxious that she shouted, "Okay. If you want anything in exchange, just tell me." She is indeed a little rich woman. Suchen was secretly happy, glanced at Jingsheng and said, "This, brother Jing said this." "Hey hey hey. Don't bring this. It's you," Jingsheng immediately complained. Suchen didn't give him a chance to argue, so he rushed to say, "Brother Jing said that one was given to you as an apology before, and the other one was naturally given to his cute, beautiful, gentle, and kind-hearted little junior sister, but, it is necessary a little reward to pay for this arrest. After all, we paid a lot of money, took great risks, and risked our lives to catch these two cuddling bunnies. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion." Author, 7 years. Chapter 1119. Chapter 1119. This kid has such a dark heart. Martial arts, 2 dragons playing with pearls. Jingsheng on the side almost dropped his jaw when he heard this, and looked at Suchen dumbfounded. This kid can actually make more nonsense than me. How is this unruly little girl in front of her cute, beautiful, gentle, and kind? Guying was secretly happy when she heard this. Since she had known Jingsheng since childhood, she naturally knew that this guy would not say such nice things. She looked at Suchen with her beautiful eyes and thought to herself, "This little junior brother, this little junior nephew. He has good taste, unlike that hateful Jingsheng, who is vulgar and vulgar." So he smiled and said, "Tell me, whatever you want, uncle, I will satisfy you." Suchen was waiting for the sentence. He said, "I won't embarrass you, senior sister, 50 packs of chi gathering powder." 50, Jingsheng looked at him in surprise, thinking that this guy is really evil. But he didn't expect that. Guying raised her hand impatiently and ordered the doorman, "Go get 50 packs of chi gathering powder." Suchen suddenly felt that the little girl's gesture of raising her hand was particularly domineering, and Jingsheng on the side also secretly criticized this little girl for being a prodigal. A quarter of an hour later, the two parties completed the transaction, each getting what they needed, and only Jingsheng was there. The side murmured, "It's so easy for you, kid. If I had known, I would have ordered some elixirs or something." Suchen ignored him, turned to Guying, who was melting the ice crystals for the cuddle rabbit, and said, "By the way, cuddle rabbits usually only eat soybean grass. I have some here." Handing the grass to Guying, Gu Yingying had a good impression of Suchen and patted Suchen's shoulder proudly and said, "If anything happens to my nephew in the future, just come to me." Jing Sheng touched his nose and said, "I also put in a lot of effort." Gu Ying gave him a big eye roll. After leaving the medicine garden, Suchen walked alone on the mountain path, his steps light. The hard work of the past half-month was finally not in vain. Not only did he improve his strength to the 4th level of Kaiwu, but he also exceeded expectations and got a full 50 packets of Qi gathering powder. With these 50 packs of Qi gathering powder, Suchen is confident that he can improve his cultivation to the 6th level of Qi martial arts. The further you go in cultivation, the more spiritual energy is needed to break through the 1st level of cultivation. Moreover, this Qi gathering powder is a low-level elixir after all. It is not easy to push Suchen's cultivation level to the 6th level of Qi martial arts. If you want to go further, taking Qi gathering powder is not worthwhile, and you have to switch to higher level elixirs, such as the small bottle of spiritual dew that he has been reluctant to use. And only by raising his cultivation level to the 8th level of Qi martial arts, Suchen estimated that he would be able to barely use spirit stones to practice. The amount of spiritual energy of the 8th level of Kaiwu in the residual volume technique is roughly equivalent to that of the 1st level of Suan Wu. It should be able to withstand the impact of the mixed spiritual energy in the spiritual stone without suffering backlash. Just when Suchen lowered his head and thought about his future training route, a gust of fist wind suddenly hit him. With the vigilance he had developed over the past 7 years, Suchen forcibly moved his important parts to let his shoulders resist the blow. With a bang sound, he was hit hard and took 4 or 5 steps back. Yo-ho! The boy was quite vigilant. After receiving a blow from me, Yewia, he only took a few steps back. A 19-year-old young man put away his fists and stared at the boy with an unkind look. Suchen's face darkened. With the eyesight he had developed when he was at the 9th level of Suan Wu, this unruly young man had clearly just broken through to Kaiwu. With the 6th level of cultivation and the 4th level of Kaiwu, it would be difficult to defeat him. Those who come are not good, and those who are good will not come. Yewei raised his head and squinted at the young man in front of him, and said disdainfully, "I just learned from the medicine. Where is Yuanlei? What are you carrying? Hand them all over so I don't have to do it myself." Suchen snorted coldly and said word by word, "A good dog doesn't block the way." Yewei immediately widened his eyes and said poof. His eyes flashed fiercely, and the spiritual power of his whole body was added to his fists, and he quickly attacked Suchen. "How dare you insult me, Yewei? Then prepare to be disabled." Yewei's fists were like dragons. They circled around each other and turned into a force of vigor and rushed towards Suchen's face without sparing any force. If this move was successful, Suchen would be crippled even if he didn't die. 2 dragons playing with pearls. Suchen has seen this martial skill before. It is only the lowest martial skill in Qingxia sect, but for monks in the Qi martial realm, it is already a very strong martial skill. Haha, even the monks from Qingxia sect's Suanwi realm can't touch me with this move. With your little understanding, you still want to hit me. Suchen sneered, as if he knew where Yewei's fists would come from. He moved his left foot slightly, easily avoiding this murderous move. What? He actually dodged it. Yewei was secretly shocked, but he just thought it was this kid's good luck. Taking advantage of the remaining energy, he turned around and swept in mid-air, running towards Suchen's face. As long as the opponent's movements were not like Suchen's, if you have quick eyesight, don't even think about hitting him. Suchen took advantage of it, took a small step back, and easily avoided it. Yewei fell to the ground and looked at the boy opposite him in surprise. He thought he could kill this new disciple with one move. But I didn't expect that this kid would dodge 2 of his moves in succession. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1120. Chapter 1120. Is he really just a new registered disciple? Why is it so strong? But soon, he laughed again and said sternly, since you want to play, Grandpa, I will play with you, play until you die. Stormy Stone Fist. Yebwe's fists flew so fast that a strong wind suddenly blew around him. The shadows of his fists flashed inside, like gravel wrapped in the strong wind, leaving people powerless to resist. Look. Seeing this situation, Suchen stopped teasing. The reason why his dodge is so powerful is based on the eyesight left over from the 9th level of Suan Wu, as well as the dragon's footwork that is stronger than the low-level martial arts, and this everything is based on the fact that he can see what moves are coming from the opponent. However, this move, Wind-Crushing Stone Fist, has a hint of the high-level martial arts Crazy Demon Fist, which is completely chaotic and without any structure. The best way to deal with this kind of trick is to break it with force. However, Suchen is only at the 4th level of Kaiwu at this time. Although he has the advantage of having a large amount of spiritual energy cultivated by the residual scroll technique, it is still inferior to Kaiwu. Yebwe, who is in the 6th level, is a little bit behind. But, this is an opportunity to test the extent of my true strength. Suchen narrowed his eyes slightly, showing a hint of excitement. After my self-cultivation was abolished, I haven't really had a good fight in a long time. Stormy Stone Fist? Then I'll use that double dragon trick to destroy you. Suchen stepped forward with his right foot, and his fists came out slowly. When all the spiritual energy in his body was gathered in his fists, they immediately surged out, like two roaring blue dragons, flying out with an astonishing sound of breaking through the air. Snort. Shameless talk, Yebwe sneered in his heart. A new registered disciple dared to confront him head-on. Is this a mantis? His eyes were filled with fierceness. Yebwe was outputting his spiritual power crazily, and his violent wind and gravel fist was even more impressive. On one side, the strong wind rolled over the rocks, and while the angry dragon came out of the sea, the two of them tried their best and collided with each other in an instant. Boom! The two sides collided, making the sound of metal and stone, and the leaked power cut off a blade of grass on both sides. What? At the time of the collision, Yebwe felt a huge force coming from his fists, causing him to involuntarily kick back 3 steps. Suchen even took 7 steps back before he stopped. Body shape. How can it be? Only 7 steps back. With his 4th level cultivation, shouldn't he be knocked away by me without any suspense? Yebwe stared at the young man not far away, feeling shocked. Hey. The deep spiritual energy of this residual scroll technique is really good. Although it is slightly at a disadvantage against an opponent at the 6th level of Kaiwu, it is not without the power to fight. Suchen's eyes were slightly bright, and the slight soreness in his arms made him feel energetic. It seems that this kid has some skills and can't win it in a short time. It's a pity that he has the elixir on him. But now is not the time for fighting. Although this road is hidden, people will come over as time goes by. If the steward catches him, the gain will not be worth the loss. Yebwe's eyes flickered, staring at the young man opposite, with a look of greed and unwillingness on his face. Good luck to you, kid. If Grandpa lets you go today, you won't be so lucky next time. Yebwe put down his harsh words and walked away. Did I tell you to leave? A calm voice suddenly sounded from behind. Yebwe turned around in surprise, his eyes narrowed dangerously. Oh! Suchen walked towards Yebwe step by step, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. I, Suchen, fight with others and rarely make loss-making transactions. You can't let me go away empty-handed. Yebwe burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard. Are you okay with your brain? I gave you a break, but you actually delivered it to your door yourself. Yebwe has been successfully provoked to murder by Suchen. If he doesn't beat this kid's skin and muscles today, Yewei will walk backwards from now on. If you want to die, Grandpa, I will make it happen for you. Yewei punched out one after another, and moved forward alternately with his feet splayed out. The sand and gravel were flying, and he rushed towards Suchen with a fierce momentum. Suchen's feet were slightly pointed, and he was moving unsteadily in a very small space, which made people feel uncomfortable. Unable to capture the direction, this is a sign that the dragon's footwork has reached its peak. I'm a little inferior in a head-to-head encounter, but you do, how can you hurt me at all? In a moment of trance, Yewei felt that his eyes were blurred, and there was suddenly no target in front of him. This frightened him, and cold sweat immediately broke out on his back. Out of his rich combat experience, at this moment, he forcibly changed direction, his right foot slammed into the ground, and his body flew out to the left. However, what he didn't expect was that a fist as big as a sand bowl suddenly appeared on his left cheek, as if he had bumped into it on purpose. In an instant, severe pain filled his mind, and with a bang, several bloody teeth flew out of his mouth, and his body fell heavily to the ground. How is this going? Yewei was so frightened that he couldn't even see his opponent's punches clearly. How strong is this young man? Is he really a new registered disciple? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1121. Chapter 1121 The conflict between Fuhurij and Nanlongguan disciples. Suchen returns. However, he no longer had the time to think about these issues. The fists and soles of his feet hit him in the face like raindrops, and what was extremely disgusting was that they hit him on the same spot every time. Amid the accumulating pain, he fainted happily. Suchen slowly retracted his fist, suppressed the boiling spiritual power in his body, and wiped away the hot sweat. With the strength of the 4th level of Kaiwu, it is really tiring to deal with such an opponent. Suchen sighed while skillfully searching Yewei's body. After a while, with a bag of loot, Suchen disappeared on this path in 2 or 3 steps, on a small river more than 10 meters wide. A piece of dozens of the huge stone with a length of 100 meters and wide was cut into a flat martial arts field. Half a month ago, the new registered disciples of the Vajra sect lived and practiced on one side of this martial arts field. However, just as the 81 disciples of Fuhiling 3 days after entering Nanlongguan, another site under the Vajra sect, recruited 72 new disciples, and these disciples happened to be placed opposite the Fuhiling disciples, and the disciples from the 2 places lived across the river. However, there is only one martial arts field by the river. At this time, the giant stone martial arts field is full of disciples from Nanlongguan who are stretching their muscles and practicing martial arts, while the disciples from Fuhiling can only stand on the giant stone angrily. Below, he glared angrily at the people on the martial arts field. Look at this bunch of trash from Fuhiling. Apart from killing us with their looks, what else can they do? A Nanlongguan disciple with a rather majestic figure laughed and cursed loudly at the bottom. The fellow disciples around him laughed and looked at the Fuhiling disciples below with contempt and disdain in their eyes. I say, if you don't dare to come up and fight, get the hell away from me. I have a bad temper. If you offend me, I will rush down and throw all you chicks into the river, the majestic man cursed loudly. But the disciples of Fuhiling could only lower their heads, suppress their depression, and silently went to find a martial arts venue farther away in 2s and 3s. Damn it! Isn't it just because they have a few people at the 5th level of Kaiwu in Nanlong Bay? We have been practicing in this martial arts field for a long time, why should we be driven away? Zhao Kong, a registered disciple of Fuhiling, secretly said with hatred. Shh. Don't let them hear it, otherwise, if they really charge down, none of us can stop them, the fellow disciple next to him kindly advised. Thinking of the tragic situation of people from the 2 places fighting for the martial arts field 10 days ago, Zhao Kang could only suppress the anger in his heart. In that battle, the Fuhiling side with the largest number of people, actually Nanlongguan, used 3 5th level Kaiwa disciples as the vanguard. With one charge, they overturned the 81 people charging at Fuhiling. After that, they even chased the people from Fuhiling. If it weren't for the Vajra sect, only the disciples within the sect were allowed to fight. If the fight is limited and no serious injuries occur, I'm afraid the people in Fuhiling will still be lying in bed. Alas, if we want to blame, we can only blame us for not being good at learning and not practicing well enough. This is a world where the strong are respected. If we lose, we can only accept injustice. Zhao Kang heard his companion sighing like this and snorted angrily, who said, "We are not good at learning. If Su Chen, the strongest among us, hadn't been called away by Master Jing Sheng, how could we in Fuhurij be defeated so miserably? Yes. Our strongest people in Fuhurij are not here. But Su Chen's cultivation is only at the 2nd level of Kaiwu. No matter how strong he is, how can he be the opponent of the 3 5th level Kaiwu masters in Nanlong Bay?" Hearing what his companion said, Zhao Kang's eyes widened, and then he couldn't help but sigh. Yes, no matter how strong Su Chen is, how can he be the opponent of a 5th level Kaiwu master? There is a 3-level difference in strength between the two sides, so what's the point? Beat. I, a fellow from Fuhiling, am I just being oppressed by the people from Nanlongguan? If we hadn't lost one of the strongest people who could be a forward, how could we have been overwhelmed by them? I, Zhao Kang, am not willing to give in. When it was getting dark, Su Chen finally returned to his small courtyard by the river. The Vajra sect occupies a large area. There are more than 2,000 disciples, elders, and sect masters in the sect, scattered across hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers. It seemed extremely loose and transparent, so everyone could be assigned a small courtyard. Even a new disciple like Su Chen could have a small courtyard with 3 rooms. Without alarming anyone, Su Chen, after entering the house, after not being here for half a month, this small courtyard where he had only lived for half a day had a layer of dust. He cleaned it up and down, took a shower, and Su Chen sat down with a fresh look. On the bed, he checked the trophies he got from Yehuia. 15 low-grade spiritual stones, a bottle of ordinary healing elixir, and 5 explosive charms. Seeing these 5 explosive charms, Su Chen thought of King Xia sect being raped by him. Kill Lu Hong. Although the power of this thing is limited, if you are in danger, it can still block the enemy for a moment. The key is that this kind of spiritual talisman does not consume anything, and only needs a trace of spiritual power to activate it. It is a bit boring. These things, Yehuia, a poor guy, was immediately forgotten by Su Chen. He crossed his legs and breathed it out to adjust his condition to the best, then opened a pack of qi gathering powder and poured it into his mouth.